Hello guys, welcome to Percy Fiction. So in this video, we will see, what if Percy read the Naruto got the power of Nine Tail? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Crimson Tide. The sea had always been Percy's refuge. Beneath the waves, the world simplified into currents and pressure, a place where his thoughts quieted and his demigod senses sharpened. Today, however, something felt different. The Atlantic waters off Montauk carried whispers he couldn't quite decipher, like distant conversations just beyond his understanding. Percy propelled himself deeper, the water darkening around him. His father's instructions had been characteristically cryptic: investigate the anomaly in the northern trench. You'll know it when you find it. That was 3 hours ago. So far, all He'd found were confused fish and an irritable pod of whales complaining about warming waters. Thanks, Dad. Super helpful, Percy muttered, bubbles escaping his lips and swirling upward. At 18, he'd grown accustomed to the gods' vague directives, but it didn't make them any less frustrating. A sudden pulse rippled through the water, subtle but unmistakable. Percy froze, treading water as he tried to pinpoint the source. Another pulse, stronger this time, coming from a narrow ravine to his left. The seafloor dropped away sharply, revealing a chasm that hadn't been on any of the maps Annabeth had shown him. Well, that's definitely an anomaly. Percy unsheathed Riptide, its celestial bronze gleaming even in the murky depths. The sword cast eerie shadows across the underwater canyon as he descended. The pulses grew stronger, more frequent. They didn't feel like any underwater creature Percy had encountered, nor did they match the familiar signatures of godly power. This was something else, ancient but foreign, like music played in a key he'd never heard before. The ravine narrowed until Percy had to turn sideways to squeeze through. Just as claustrophobia began to set in, the passage opened into a small, perfectly circular chamber. In its center, embedded in the seafloor, a red crystal formation pulsed with ruby light. Okay, this is new. Percy approached cautiously, Riptide extended. The crystal's light intensified as he drew closer, sending crimson ripples through the water. As the glow brightened, Percy made out shapes etched into the surrounding stone, intricate spirals and symbols unlike Greek or any other writing system he recognized. Percy reached out with his free hand, not touching the crystal but testing the water around it. No traps triggered, no alarms sounded. Just that steady, pulsing light. Dad, if this is some kind of test, a hint would be nice. His voice echoed strangely in the chamber, distorted by more than just the water. A school of small silver fish darted past him, then abruptly changed course, swimming in a tight circle around the crystal. Percy followed their movement, noticing how they traced a perfect spiral pattern, like the symbols on the walls coming to life. The crystal's pulsing synchronized with Percy's heartbeat. 1 beat, 2 beats, 3. On the 4th, the crystal cracked. Percy backed away, raising Riptide defensively. The crack widened, red light pouring out like liquid fire, but strangely, it didn't dissipate in the water. Instead, it maintained its shape, forming tendrils that drifted upward. From the fractured crystal emerged what looked like a scroll, its casing made of some dark material that absorbed the red light rather than reflecting it. The scroll floated upward, hovering before Percy as if presenting itself. Every instinct screamed danger, yet something deeper pulled him forward. The sea itself seemed to be guiding him, current hands pushing him gently toward the floating object. This better not be like that time with Pandora's Pythos, Percy grumbled, reaching for the scroll. His fingers brushed its surface, the world exploded into crimson. Pain lanced through Percy's body, starting at his fingertips and racing up his arm. He tried to release the scroll, but it clung to him, its outer casing dissolving into his skin like ink seeping into paper. The red light enveloped him completely, blinding him to everything else. Then came the voice, deep, ancient, and unmistakably irritated. So, I'm trapped again. How utterly predictable. Percy spun in the water, searching for the source. Who's there? Inside you. Unfortunately, the voice carried a rumbling growl that Percy felt in his chest more than heard with his ears. You humans never learn, do you? Always meddling with powers beyond your comprehension. I'm not exactly human, Percy replied automatically, then wondered why he was bothering to correct a disembodied voice. A harsh, barking laugh echoed through his mind. Half human, half god. Yes, I can sense it now. How interesting. This world smells different. The red light receded, drawing back into Percy's body like water down a drain. The pain subsided, replaced by a strange warmth spreading outward from his core. Percy looked down at himself, expecting to see some visible change, but his body appeared normal, except for a spiral mark No. W burned into his palm where the scroll had touched him. The seal has adapted to your physiology, the voice observed. Clever. I wonder who managed that particular trick in this realm. What are you? Percy demanded, his voice steadier than he felt. And what do you mean, this realm? I am Kurama, the nine-tailed fox. And you, boy, have just become my newest prison. Percy's blood ran cold. Prison. That didn't sound good. Look, I don't know what's happening, but I didn't mean to trap anything. Let's just undo whatever this is in. A savage pulse of energy cut him off, sending him tumbling backward through the water. Percy's control over his surroundings faltered for the first time in years, and he had to concentrate to keep from being smashed against the chamber walls. There is no undoing a ceiling. Child, Kurama snarled. The scroll was a trap, designed to bind me to a new host should I ever escape my previous one. Someone in your world has been preparing for this possibility for a very long time. Percy steadied himself, taking deep breaths of the saltwater around him. Okay, so you're stuck with me, and I'm stuck with you. Great. Any chance you could be a little less angry about it? The fox's laughter this time held genuine amusement. You have spirit, I'll grant you that. Most hosts soil themselves when they first hear my voice. Yeah, well, when you've faced down titans and primordial gods, your threshold for intimidation gets pretty high. Percy felt something stir within him. Curiosity, but not his own. Titans. Gods. Tell me, boy, what are you called? Percy Jackson, son of Poseidon. Son of a god. That explains the water manipulation. Interesting. The voice grew thoughtful. Perhaps this arrangement won't be entirely tedious after all. Before Percy could respond, a tremor shook the chamber. Debris fell from the ceiling, and the red crystal, now dull and lifeless, crumbled into dust. We need to leave, Kurama said urgently. The dimensional pocket is collapsing now that the scroll has fulfilled its purpose. Dimensional what? Percy shouted as larger chunks of rock began to fall around him. No time. Move, or we both die. Percy didn't need to be told twice. He propelled himself toward the narrow passage, using the water to push debris out of his way. The entire ravine was collapsing behind him. A chain reaction triggered by the crystal's destruction. Faster. Kurama roared in his mind. I'm trying. Percy shot back, but even as he said it, he felt a surge of energy unlike anything he'd experienced before. It wasn't the familiar power of the sea. This was hotter, wilder, like liquid fire running through his veins. Without conscious thought, Percy channeled this new energy into his movement. The water around him bubbled as he rocketed forward, shooting out of the ravine just as it completely collapsed behind him. He didn't stop until he was 100 yards away, hovering in open water and staring at the cloud of silt and debris where the mysterious chamber had been. What was that? Percy gasped, looking down at his hands. For a moment, he thought he'd seen them wrapped in a faint red glow. That was a fraction of my chakra, Kurama replied, sounding almost smug. Consider it a sample of what's possible when you learn to properly channel my power. Chakra. Is that like mana or something? It's nothing like your world's magical energies, the fox said dismissively. Chakra is the fundamental life force where I come from, physical and spiritual energy combined. Even the small amount you just used would have killed an ordinary human. Percy frowned. But I'm not ordinary. Precisely why you survived. Your divine heritage makes you compatible. More so than I would have expected. A school of fish swam frantically past Percy, their thoughts a jumbled mess of fear and confusion. Something had them spooked. Something beyond the collapsing ravine. We've attracted attention, Kurama warned. My energy signature is distinctive. Percy tightened his grip on Riptide. What kind of attention? The answer came in the form of a dark shape emerging from the depths below, massive, serpentine, and moving fast. Percy recognized it immediately. A sea serpent, but unlike any he'd encountered before. Its scales gleamed with an unnatural crimson sheen, and its eyes glowed with the same ruby light as the crystal. That creature has been touched by chakra, Kurama observed. Recently. Meaning we're not the only ones who crossed between worlds. The serpent lunged upward, jaws wide enough to swallow Percy whole. He darted aside, slashing with riptide as the monster passed. The blade cut a shallow groove along the serpent's flank, drawing ichor that dissolved into the water like black smoke. The creature roared, a sound that shouldn't have been possible underwater, and whipped around for another attack. Your weapon barely scratched it, Kurama said. Its scales have been reinforced by chakra. You'll need more power. I'm open to suggestions, Percy replied, dodging another lunge. He summoned a current, trying to push the serpent back, but the creature sliced through the water as if it were air. Use my power. Channel it through your weapon. How exactly am I supposed to do that? Focus. Feel the energy I'm providing and direct it outward. Percy had about 2 seconds before the serpent attacked again. He closed his eyes briefly, searching for the alien warmth he'd felt earlier. There, a reservoir of power. Wild and untamed, churning just beneath his consciousness. He reached for it mentally, drawing a strand of energy toward Riptide. The sword began to glow, first with its usual bronze light. Then with a crimson aura that engulfed the blade entirely. The serpent struck. Percy swung. Riptide sliced through the creature's scales like they were made of paper. E-blade left a trail of bubbling red energy in its wake, and the serpent's severed head tumbled away into the depths. Percy stared at his sword in shock. The red aura faded, leaving only the familiar celestial bronze. That was effective, Kurama finished for him. But unrefined. With practice, you could do much more. The serpent's body began to dissolve, but not into the golden dust Percy expected from monsters. Instead, it broke apart into flakes of red energy that swirled briefly before dissipating into the water. That creature was not native to your world, Kurama said. It was corrupted by chakra. Twisted into something new. Are you saying it came from your world too? No, it was from this world, but changed by contact with chakra. The question is, who is spreading chakra in this realm? And for what purpose? Percy sheathed Riptide, his mind racing. I need to get back to Camp Half-Blood. Annabeth might know something about dimensional, whatever you called it. Dimensional transference. Yes, consulting your allies would be wise. But be cautious about revealing my existence too quickly. Gods tend to react poorly to powers they don't control. Percy couldn't argue with that. Zeus had nearly started a war over a stolen lightning bolt. He didn't want to imagine the king of gods' reaction to an extra-dimensional fox demon sharing his body. Let's start with the basics, Percy said, beginning to swim upward. If we're stuck together, I should probably know more about you than just your name and attitude problem. My attitude problem, kept me alive for centuries while humans tried to use me as a weapon, Kurama growled. But very well, by the time we reach the surface, you'll understand exactly what you've gotten yourself into, Percy Jackson. The summer air hit Percy's face as he emerged from the waves, the late afternoon sun hanging low over Montauk's familiar shoreline. He'd spent the entire swim back listening to Kurama's explanation of his world, Biju. Jinchuriki, shinobi, chakra networks, and a history that sounded more brutal than anything Greek mythology had to offer. You're taking this remarkably well, Kurama noted as Percy walked onto the beach. Trust me, I'm freaking out internally, Percy replied, scanning the empty shoreline. I just save the visible panic for special occasions. Like what? Annabeth finding out I've been possessed by a giant fox from another dimension might qualify. I haven't possessed you, Kurama corrected irritably. We're sealed together. There's a difference. Pretty sure my girlfriend won't appreciate the distinction. Percy reached into his pocket for the drachma he'd stored there, then paused. Can you see my thoughts? Read my memories. I can sense strong emotions and see what you see. Accessing specific memories would require more integration than we currently have. Percy wasn't sure if that was reassuring or concerning. And can you take control of my body? A rumbling laugh echoed through his mind. Not without your permission or extreme emotional distress. The seal appears designed to protect your autonomy. Someone created it with unusual care. Any ideas who that might be? None. The dimensional transference alone would require power beyond most beings have encountered. To create a seal that adapts to an entirely different world's metaphysics, that's troubling. Percy frowned. Why troubling? Because it means someone knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't accident or coincidence, Percy Jackson. You were chosen. That uncomfortable thought hung in the air as Percy created a small mist with his powers, catching the sunlight to form a faint rainbow. He tossed the drachma through it. "O Iris, goddess of the rainbow, accept my offering. Show me Annabeth Chase at Camp Half-Blood." The mist shimmered, then resolved into an image of Annabeth bent over a laptop in the Athena cabin. Her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked up as if sensing the connection. "Percy, did you find whatever your dad sent you after?" Her gray eyes narrowed as she took in his expression. "What's wrong?" I ran into a situation." Percy glanced around to make sure he was alone on the beach. "Something weird happened, and I need to get back to camp ASAP." Monster weird or God weird? More like, interdimensional being sealed inside me, weird. Annabeth's jaw dropped. "You're joking. I really wish I was. Look, I'll explain everything when I get there, but maybe do some preliminary research on, chakra systems and something called Biju." "On what and what?" Annabeth was already reaching for a notebook. "Percy, what exactly happened down there?" "She's quick," Kurama observed. "I like her already." "Not now," Percy muttered. "Not now what?" Annabeth asked sharply. "Sorry, not talking to you. Talking to the, voice in my head." Percy winced at how that sounded. "I swear I'm not crazy." "Jury's still out on that," Annabeth replied, but her expression had shifted from confusion to determination, her problem-solving mode. "Get back here immediately. And Percy, be careful. If something's really sealed inside you, I know, it might not be the only thing that came through." Percy thought of the crimson-scaled sea serpent. "I'll be there in a couple hours. Love you. Love you too, seaweed brain. Try not to pick up any more interdimensional hitchhikers on the way." The connection dissolved, leaving Percy alone on the beach. Or rather, not alone at all. "She didn't seem particularly surprised that you've been sealed with an ancient chakra entity," Kurama noted. "Annabeth's seen a lot. We both have." Percy started walking toward the road where he'd parked his car. "After Tartarus, your bar for shocking development gets pretty high." "Tartarus, the Greek underworld." Kurama's voice held genuine curiosity. "You've been to the realm of the dead and returned." "It's a long story. We appear to have time, and I'm not going anywhere." Percy sighed as he reached his battered blue Prius. "Fair point. I'll tell you mine if you tell me more about yours. Starting with why someone would go to all this trouble to trap you in another dimension." He felt the fox's attention sharpen. "That, Percy Jackson, is precisely the question we need to answer." The drive to Camp Half-Blood took longer than usual. Percy kept getting distracted by Kurama's commentary on everything from modern transportation inefficient compared chakra travel, to the Billboard Top 40 playing on the radio. Your world's music is chaotic but intriguing. By the time Percy passed the camp's magical boundaries, the sun had set, and the family glow of the dining pavilion's torches lit up the valley below Half-Blood Hill. As he crested the hill, Peleus the dragon guardian lifted his head in greeting, then immediately tensed, smoke curling from his nostrils. "Easy, boy," Percy said, approaching slowly. "It's just me," Peleus growled, eyes fixed on Percy with unmistakable suspicion. "He senses me," Kurama said. "Creatures with connections to spiritual energy often can." "Great. If the dragon freaks out, the whole camp will too." Percy raised his hands placatingly. "Peleus, I promise I'm not a threat." "Well, not to the camp, anyway." The dragon snorted but lowered his head, though his eyes remained wary as Percy passed. Camp Half-Blood looked the same as ever, strawberry fields stretching to the north, cabins arranged in a Greek omega. The amphitheater glowing in the distance where campers were likely gathering for evening sing-along. The normalcy of it all made Percy's situation feel even more surreal. "This is where demigods train." Kurama sounded unimpressed. "It lacks the defensive fortifications I would expect for warriors." It's got magical boundaries, Percy explained. And besides, it's summer camp, not a military base. In my world, training begins at age 6. By 12, children are expected to kill if necessary. Yeah, that's messed up. No offense. None taken. I never claimed shinobi society was ideal. Percy spotted Annabeth waiting on the porch of the big house, deep in conversation with Chiron. The centaur's tail flicked nervously as they talked, and both turned as Percy approached. Percy. Chiron's expression was grave as he studied his former student. Annabeth has informed me of your situation. Some of it, Annabeth clarified. The parts that didn't sound completely insane. Percy climbed the steps to the porch. Trust me, the insane parts are actually the most believable once you hear everything. The centaur is old, Kurama observed. Very old, and he's encountered beings like me before. Though not exactly the same. How do you know that? Percy asked aloud. Chiron raised an eyebrow. Know what? Sorry. Percy gestured vaguely at his head. Quote, Kurama says you've met other beings like him before. Chiron's tail stilled. Kurama. That's the entity's name. When Percy nodded, the centaur's expression grew troubled. I have indeed encountered many sealed beings over the millennia. Though none that called themselves by that name. Ask him about the East. About the time when Olympus looked toward the rising sun. Percy relayed the question. Chiron's eyes widened slightly. There was a period, long ago, when the gods turned their attention eastward, beyond their traditional Greek territories. This was before Rome, during a time of experimentation. Zeus believed there might be advantages to expanding divine influence into lands with different mystical traditions. Chiron frowned. It did not go well. Some boundaries exist for good reasons. Like boundaries between dimensions, Annabeth suggested. Precisely. Chiron gestured toward the door. Come inside. This conversation requires privacy. The familiar rec room of the big house had been hastily converted into what looked like a war council. Maps covered the ping-pong table, along with several ancient scrolls and a stack of books with Japanese characters on their spines. You've been busy, Percy said to Annabeth. She shrugged. You mentioned chakra and biju. It wasn't much to go on, but there are surprising references in some obscure mythological texts. Most ism's mistranslations are cross-cultural contamination, or deliberate obscuring of the truth, Chiron added, closing the door behind them. Now, Percy, perhaps you should start at the beginning. Percy recounted everything. The underwater mission, the crimson crystal, the scroll, and Kurama's explanation of who and what he was. As he spoke, he felt the fox's presence watching through his eyes, assessing his friends. The girl is dangerous, Kurama noted when Percy described Annabeth's research. Not physically, perhaps, but her mind. She reminds me of certain Nara clan members. I'll take that as a compliment, Annabeth said when Percy relayed this comment. Now, can you tell us more about how chakra works? The texts I found were frustratingly vague. It would be easier to show than tell. Percy felt a subtle shift inside him, a warm current of energy flowing up from his core. Kurama wants to demonstrate, he warned, then gasped as the energy reached his extremities. His skin began to glow with a faint red aura. The air around him shimmered with heat, and Percy felt a strange lightness, as if gravity had loosened its hold. Chiron backed up, his front hooves pawing nervously at the floorboards. Percy, be careful. That energy, it's not Greek. It doesn't follow the natural laws of our world. I know, Percy said, staring at his glowing hands. It feels wild, powerful. This is the barest fraction of what we could accomplish together, Kurama said, and Percy heard the unmistakable pride in his voice. With training, you could channel enough chakra to level mountains. That's not exactly reassuring, Annabeth said after Percy repeated Kurama's words. She approached cautiously, her hand outstretched. When her fingers came within inches of the red aura, she pulled back sharply. It's hot, not burning, but definitely not normal body temperature. It feels normal to me, Percy said. Like I'm standing in sunlight. Your body is adapting, Kurama explained. The seal is integrating our energies gradually. A full transformation would be premature. Transformation? Chiron asked sharply when Percy relayed this. What kind of transformation? Percy felt Kurama's hesitation. In time, he could manifest portions of my form, enhanced senses, accelerated healing, even physical attributes like claws or tails. But such NGES require perfect synchronization between host and Biju. Which we definitely don't have yet, Percy added after explaining. We're still at the reluctant roommates stage. An apt description, Kurama agreed. And Percy felt the chakra recede, the red glow fading from his skin. Annabeth was making rapid notes. This chakra seems to function similarly to some descriptions of chi in Eastern traditions, but more weaponized. The potential applications are incredible. She looked up. But that doesn't explain why this is happening now, or how a being from another dimension ended up sealed in an underwater cave in our world. Chiron moved to one of the scrolls on the table, unrolling it carefully. I believe I may have part of the answer. This document dates from the 3rd dynasty of approximately 2100 BCE. It describes a conflict between the gods and what it calls the 9 demon lords of the distant realm. According to this account, Zeus and Poseidon combined their powers to banish these entities back to their own world, sealing the pathway between dimensions. Demons, Kurama scoffed. Always the same story. Anything with power that doesn't bow to the gods must be demonic. Percy couldn't help but agree. So the gods knew about Kurama's world. They've been there. Not exactly, Chiron replied. The text suggests they encountered these beings at a nexus point, a place where dimensional boundaries grow thin. Rather than risk direct confrontation, they chose to strengthen those boundaries, ensuring separation between worlds. But something's weakened those boundaries now, Annabeth concluded. The sea serpent Percy encountered proves that chakra is leaking through somehow. Or someone is deliberately channeling it, Kurama suggested darkly. The serpent's transformation wasn't natural. It was altered with purpose. Before Percy could relay this observation, the door burst open. Grover stood there, his expression panicked, reed pipes clutched in his hand. You guys need to come quick, the satyr gasped. Something's attacking the camp borders, something big. And it's asking for Percy by name. The scene at Half-Blood Hill was chaos. Campers had formed a defensive line along the magical boundary, weapons drawn. Beyond the barrier, illuminated by the border patrol's torches, stood a figure that made Percy's heart skip a beat. It looked human, mostly, a tall man with pale skin and long black hair. But his eyes glowed with an unnatural crimson light, identical to the crystal from the underwater chamber. Around him, the grass had withered in a perfect circle, as if the very life had been drained from the earth. Snake, Kurama growled, and Percy felt the fox's hatred burning through their connection. That's no ordinary human. He reeks of serpent chakra. The man smiled as Percy approached the barrier, revealing teeth that had been filed to points. Ah, the new Jinchuriki arrives. I was beginning to think you were avoiding me. Who are you? Percy called, riptide already drawn and glowing faintly in the darkness. My name wouldn't mean anything to you, child of Poseidon. But you may call me Orochi. The man bowed with mocking formality. I've come to welcome the 9 tails to our humble realm. And to warn you, Orochi, Kurama snarled. Not the original, but a vessel, like you. Someone in this world has taken that serpent's power into themselves. Percy relayed this to Annabeth and Chiron, who had joined him at the boundary. A vessel, like what happened to Percy? Annabeth asked. Similar, but not identical. This is a willing union, emerging rather than a sealing. And incomplete. The human remains dominant for now. Orochi's smile widened, as if he'd heard Kurama's assessment. The fox is correct, as usual. My partner and I have come to an arrangement that benefits us both. As you and Kurama might, if you're wise. What do you want? Percy demanded, tightening his grip on Riptide. To offer guidance. The barriers between worlds are thinning, Percy Jackson. Soon, powers your god's thoughts safely contained will flow freely between realms. Orochi spread his arms. I am merely the first wave. There are others seeking the Biju. Others who won't be as diplomatic as I am. Is that why you corrupted that sea serpent? As a diplomatic gesture, Percy's voice dripped sarcasm. Orochi laughed. A test, nothing more. I needed to confirm Kurama's presence, and what better way than to send a scout attuned to chakra signatures? You disposed of it quite efficiently, I must say. Chiron stepped forward, his bow now in hand with an arrow nocked. You trespass on protected ground, creature. State your business clearly or depart. My business is with the Nine Tails and its host. Orochi's gaze never left Percy. The others will come for you, Jinchuriki. The Akatsuki remnant still hunts the Biju, even across dimensions. When they find you, and they will, you'll need allies who understand the power you contain. He's lying, Kurama said flatly. Or at least, not telling the whole truth. The Akatsuki were destroyed in my world. Maybe in your world, Percy replied quietly. But if dimensional barriers are breaking down, then fragments of organizations, individuals seeking power, might find their way through. Yes, that's possible. Orochi seemed amused by their private conversation. Listen to the fox, Percy Jackson. Kurama has survived centuries by knowing when to form alliances. I already have allies. Percy gestured to the campers arrayed behind him. And they don't involve mysterious snake men who send monsters after me. Your demigod friends, Orochi laughed. They cannot help you against what's coming. Even your gods will be overwhelmed by shinobi techniques they've never encountered. His expression hardened. But I can teach you to master Kurama's power before it destroys you, and everything you love. Percy felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. What do you mean, destroys? The seal is stable, Kurama interjected quickly. He's manipulating you. But Orochi's smile suggested he'd struck a nerve. Ask Kurama what happens to Jinchuriki who cannot control their Biju. Ask him about the madness, the rampages, the villages reduced to ash when the human mind breaks under the strain of containing such power. Percy glanced at Annabeth, whose expression had grown increasingly troubled. Is that true? She asked quietly. Before Percy could relay the question to Kurama, Orochi continued. I'll give you time to consider my offer. Percy Jackson. 1 week. Meet me at the place where the boundaries first thinned, where salt water meets the moonlit sky at the edge of the world. Riddles, Kurama muttered, always with the dramatic riddles. And if I refuse? Percy called. Orochi's form began to shimmer, as if he were made of heat haze. Then pray to your gods that the Akatsuki find you before I do. At least their extraction process is relatively quick. His eyes gleamed brighter. Mine is designed to be educational. With those words, he dissolved into a swirl of crimson energy that dissipated into the night air. The campers murmured nervously as Chiron ordered increased patrols along the boundaries. Percy stood frozen, Kurama's silence in his mind more telling than any words. Percy. Annabeth touched his arm. What did he mean by extraction? Percy turned to her, his expression grim. I think he was talking about removing Kurama from me. And from what I'm gathering, that's not a survivable procedure. It is not, Kurama confirmed quietly. The host always dies when a Biju is extracted. Always. Percy whispered. Always. The War Council Conven. Ed in the big house rec room lasted well past midnight. Senior counselors from all cabins sat around the ping-pong table, faces grave as Percy explained the situation. Kurama remained silent through most of it, offering occasional clarifications but otherwise observing. So let me get this straight, Clarice from Ares' cabin said, twirling her knife against the table. You've got some super powerful fox demon inside you. A snake guy wants to either recruit you or gut you, and there might be even worse people coming from this other dimension. That about sums it up, Percy confirmed. Awesome. Clarice grinned. I was worried this summer was going to be boring. This isn't a joke, Annabeth snapped. If what Orochi said is true, we're looking at threats unlike anything we've faced before. These shinobi use energy that doesn't follow the rules of our world. All the more reason to hit them hard and fast, Clarice countered. The warrior girl has the right instinct, if poor strategic sense, Kurama commented. Orochi is merely testing defenses now, observing responses. A direct confrontation would be premature. Percy relayed this assessment, earning a scowl from Clarice and thoughtful nods from others. We need to contact the gods, Chiron said. Zeus must be informed that dimensional boundaries are weakening. And tell him what? Percy asked. That I've been sealed with an entity from another world. He'll blast me to atoms before asking questions. Percy's right, Annabeth agreed. We need more information before approaching Olympus. If the gods sealed these pathways millennia ago, they might opt for the simplest solution again, elimination of all foreign elements. Including me, Percy added grimly. Your companion is wise, Kurama observed. Gods. rarely distinguish between the vessel and what it contains. The council debated late into the night, eventually agreeing on 3 immediate actions: strengthen camp defenses, research dimensional boundaries and sealing techniques, and prepare for the possibility that Percy might need to meet with Orochi after all, with appropriate backup. As the meeting broke up, Chiron asked Percy to stay behind. When they were alone except for Annabeth, the centaur fixed Percy with a penetrating gaze. "There's something else troubling me about this situation," Chiron said. "Poseidon sent you specifically to investigate that underwater anomaly. I find it difficult to believe he was unaware of what you might find there." Percy had been wondering the same thing. "You think my dad knew about the scroll? About Kurama? I think," Chiron said carefully, "that the gods rarely act without purpose, especially in matters concerning their children. Whether Poseidon knew the specific nature of what you would encounter is unclear. But he clearly believed you, particularly, needed to be the one to find it. The water god chose you," Kurama mused. "Interesting. Perhaps he foresaw the need for a powerful vessel in coming conflicts. Or maybe he just didn't want to deal with interdimensional politics himself," Percy muttered. Annabeth squeezed his hand. "We should try to contact your father. He might have information we need." "I've been trying," Percy admitted. No answer. Not even a sea breeze acknowledgement. "The dimensional disturbance might be interfering with your world's divine communications," Kurama suggested. "In my world, chakra disruptions often blocked spiritual connections." Before Percy could relay this theory, the building shook violently. Picture frames crashed to the floor, and the ping-pong table skidded several inches across the room. "Earthquake." Annabeth grabbed the doorframe for support. Percy shook his head, already running for the door. "That wasn't natural. It felt like chakra," Kurama confirmed. "A massive release, at the camp's boundary." Outside, the night sky had taken on an ominous red tint. Campers poured from their cabins, weapons drawn as they looked toward Half-Blood Hill. There, where Talia's pine stood guard, a swirling vortex of crimson energy had appeared, a tear in reality itself. "A dimensional breach," Kurama growled. "Someone's forcing their way through." As Percy watched in horror, a figure stepped through the vortex. Unlike Orochi's almost human appearance, this newcomer made no attempt to hide their otherworldly nature. Cloaked in black adorned with red clouds, face obscured by an orange spiral mask with a single eye hole, the figure radiated menace that Percy could feel even from a distance. "Impossible," Kurama whispered, and Percy felt something he hadn't expected from the proud fox spirit: fear. "That mask, it cannot be. Who is it?" Percy asked, already running toward the hill, Annabeth and Chiron close behind. "If I'm right, and I pray to whatever gods exist that I'm not, that's the man who once controlled me completely. The man who unleashed me on his enemies like a weapon. The most dangerous shinobi who ever lived." Percy reached the base of Half-Blood Hill just as the masked figure raised a hand. The magical barrier around Camp Half-Blood, protection that had stood for centuries, shimmered visibly. Then cracked like glass. "Demigods of this realm," the figure called, his voice eerily calm. "I have come for the 9 tails. Surrender its Jinchuriki, and the rest of you may live." "Percy." Kurama's voice was urgent now. "If that's who I think it is, we cannot fight him." Not yet. Not unprepared. But Percy was already moving forward, riptide drawn. He'd faced gods and titans before. He wouldn't back down now. The masked man turned, his single visible eye fixing on Percy with terrifying intensity. "Ah, there you are. I sense Kurama's chakra within you." The eye narrowed, revealing a strange red pattern. How curious. A child of the sea god playing host to the 9 tails. The dimensions have a sense of humor, it seems. "Who are you?" Percy demanded, stopping just short of the damaged barrier. "What do you want with Kurama?" "My name is not important," the figure replied. "As for what I want," he spread his arms, "I seek what I have always sought. The power of the Biju united under one will. My will." "It is him," Kurama confirmed, his mental voice tight with rage and something else, old pain. "Madara Uchiha, or someone wearing his mantle." The masked man tilted his head. "Does Kurama remember me? Does he recall how easily I bent him to my purpose before?" Percy felt Kurama's fury building, the chakra inside him roiling like a storm. Red energy began to leak from his skin, responding to the fox's emotions rather than Percy's control. Control yourself, Kurama warned, though Percy could tell the fox was struggling with his own rage. This is what he wants, to provoke a reaction, force you to draw on more power than you can handle. With tremendous effort, Percy reined in the chakra, though his skin continued to emit a faint red glow. I don't know what history you have with Kurama, but things are different now. He's not a weapon for anyone to use. The masked man laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Noble sentiments from one so young. But you don't understand what you've become part of, Percy Jackson. The Biju are not companions or partners. They are concentrations of chakra-given consciousness, created to serve a greater purpose. And I suppose you're that greater purpose. Percy shot back. I am merely its instrument. The masked man stepped forward, and Percy noticed with alarm that his foot passed through a rock as if it were mist. This world is unbalanced. Gods playing at being rulers while humans suffer their whims. My world suffered similarly until I began my work. With the power of the 9 tails, I can bring true peace to both realms. Peace through domination, Kurama snarled. The same lies as before. Camp Half-Blood's defenders had assembled behind Percy now, dozens of demigods with weapons ready. The Ares cabin leading the charge with Clarice at their head. Chiron stood with his bow drawn, an ancient gleam in his eyes that Percy had rarely seen, the look of a warrior who had faced countless battles over thousands of years. You threaten the wrong camp, Chiron called. These children are under divine protection. Divine. The masked man's single eye crinkled in what might have been amusement. Your gods are powerful, Centaur, but they have never faced the Sharingan. They have never confronted chakra wielded by one who has mastered its secrets. As if to demonstrate, the man formed a series of rapid hand signs. The air around him distorted, and suddenly multiple copies of him appeared, each seemingly as solid as the original. Shadow clones, Kurama explained tensely. Physical duplicates, not illusions, each capable of independent action. The clones spread out along the boundary, forming a perimeter. The original fixed his gaze on Percy again. I will give you 1 week to consider your position, Jinchuriki. Come to me willingly, and I will ensure the extraction process is painless. Refuse. He gestured, and one of his clones casually licked a small object toward the nearest demigod, a daughter of Demeter who stood her ground bravely. The object, a simple kunai knife, passed through the damaged barrier and struck the ground at her feet. Where it landed, the grass immediately withered in an expanding circle, the soil blackening as if scorched by invisible fire. Refuse, the masked man continued, and I will reduce this camp to ash, kill everyone you love. And take what I want anyway. With those words, he and his clones shimmered and vanished, the dimensional tear closing behind them with a sound like thunder. The silence that followed was deafening. Percy stood at the barrier, staring at the blackened circle of earth where nothing would grow again. Kurama's presence in his mind had gone quiet, retreating into some inner chamber of their shared consciousness. Annabeth reached him first, her face pale in the moonlight. Percy, what just happened? Percy turned to her, the gravity of their situation finally hitting him full force. War, he said simply. War just happened. In the distance, lightning flashed across the clear sky. Zeus had noticed the disturbance. Soon, the gods would demand answers. Percy looked down at his hands, still faintly glowing with Kurama's chakra. 1 week. They had 1 week to prepare for a threat neither gods nor demigods fully understood, a threat from beyond the boundaries of their world. Not just your world at stake, Kurama said finally, his voice subdued. If Madara, or whoever wears his mask, gains control of my power in this realm, both our worlds will suffer. Then we'd better start training. Percy replied silently, because I'm not letting anyone take you, and I'm definitely not letting anyone hurt my friends. He felt Kurama's surprise, then a grudging respect. Perhaps you're not like the other hosts after all, Percy Jackson. Percy looked up at the night sky, where more lightning flashed in the distance. Gods and Biju, demigods and shinobi, 2 worlds on a collision course. With Percy and Kurama caught in the middle. 1 week to prepare for the impossible. Let's get to work, Percy said aloud, turning back to his waiting friends. We've got a fox to train. Chapter 1 end. Chapter 2. Foxfire and Sea Spray. Dawn broke over Camp Half-Blood with unnatural swiftness, as if even Apollo's chariot was rushing to address the crisis. Percy hadn't slept. How could he? With Kurama's presence constantly shifting within him like waves against a shore, and the masked man's threat hanging over the camp. "They're coming," Kurama warned as Percy sat on the beach, watching the sun rise over Long Island Sound. The fox had been unusually subdued since their encounter with the masked intruder, retreating into memories that Percy could sense but not access. "Who's coming?" Percy asked, though he already knew. "Your gods. I can feel them, like storms gathering on multiple horizons." Percy nodded, gathering himself. He'd spent the night learning what he could from Kurama about chakra, Biju, and the masked man who had once controlled the Nine Tails. The knowledge was incomplete. Kurama had been imprisoned for much of his existence, but it was enough to understand the gravity of their situation. "How bad is this going to be?" Percy asked, watching the water churn unnaturally as something powerful approached beneath the surface. "Depends on whether your divine father values your life above Olympian politics. That's not as reassuring as you probably think." The sea erupted 30 yards offshore. Percy didn't flinch as the massive figure of Poseidon rose from the waves. Trident in hand, sea-green eyes, so like Percy's own, fixed on his son with an inscrutable expression. "Interesting," Kurama murmured. "He's restraining his divine presence. Being careful not to overwhelm you, or perhaps me." Percy stood as his father approached, walking across the water's surface as easily as solid ground. The sea god wore simple fishing attire rather than his usual Greek armor, a deliberate choice, Percy suspected, to appear less threatening. "Percy." Poseidon stopped a few paces away, his voice carrying the depth of ocean trenches. "I see you found what was hidden." "You knew," Percy said, not a question but an accusation. "You sent me specifically to find Kurama." His father's weathered face revealed nothing. "I sent you to investigate an anomaly. What you discovered there was unexpected in its specific form, if not its general nature." "He's being careful with his words," Kurama observed. "Truth without full disclosure. Typical god behavior." Percy felt a flare of anger, but kept his voice steady. "Why me? Why now? And why didn't you warn me what I was walking into?" Poseidon sighed, and for a moment looked every bit the thousands of years he'd lived. "Walk with me, son." They moved along the shoreline, the sea unusually calm despite the god's presence. Percy waited, knowing his father would speak when ready. "The boundaries between worlds have always been permeable," Poseidon finally said. "More so in certain places, at certain times. The gods have monitored these boundaries since the ancient days, strengthening them when necessary. Like when you and Zeus banished the Biju back to their own dimension." Percy asked. Poseidon's eyebrows rose. "You've learned much in a short time." "Yes, there was such an incident. Though the details have been simplified in the telling. We did not banish the Biju, we merely reinforced the natural barriers between realms after certain entities attempted to harness their power in our world. Entities like Orochi and the Masked Man. Their names were different then, but their ambitions were the same." Poseidon stopped, turning to face Percy directly. "The boundaries have been weakening for decades, Percy. Small incursions at first, energy leaking through, occasional objects crossing over. Nothing that required direct intervention. Until now." "Until now," Poseidon agreed. 3 months ago, something changed. The barriers began deteriorating rapidly, especially at certain nexus points. The gods debated intervention, but he hesitated. "But what?" "But prophecy intervened, as it often does." Poseidon's gaze turned distant. "Apollo delivered an oracle's vision. The nine shall return through cracks between worlds, and only the child of the sea with the heart of a hero may bind chaos with friendship rather than chains." Percy stared at his father. "And you decided that meant me?" "The child of the sea left little room for interpretation," Poseidon said dryly. "Though the Olympian Council debated whether binding with friendship was wise, given our previous experiences with the Biju. Binding with chains was their preferred method before," Kurama growled. And Percy felt phantom pain echo through their connection, memories of imprisonment that weren't his own. "You could have told me," Percy said, struggling to keep the hurt from his voice. "Instead of sending me in blind." Would you have approached the situation differently if you'd known? Poseidon asked. Would you have been more careful, more hesitant? Prophecy spoke of binding through friendship. Such bonds cannot be formed through calculation or strategy. So you manipulated me, again. Poseidon's expression softened. I guided you to where you needed to be. What happened there was your choice, Percy. You could have destroyed the scroll rather than touching it. I didn't know what it was. Precisely. His father's eyes held a hint of pride now. You acted as you always do, with curiosity and courage rather than fear. That is why the Nine Tails is now bound to you, rather than being controlled by those who would use its power for destruction. Percy wanted to argue further, but something else his father had said nagged at him. You said, the Nine shall return. Does that mean all 9 Biju are coming to our world? Poseidon's expression grew grave. That remains unclear. Prophecies are imprecise tools. But the possibility exists, yes. 9 Biju unbound in your world would tear reality apart, Kurama said, alarm evident in his voice. Even the shinobi world, which evolved with our presence, struggled to contain our combined power. Percy relayed Kurama's concern. Poseidon nodded solemnly. The fox speaks truly, which is why your bond with him, is crucial. The other 8 may yet remain sealed in their world, but if they cross over. The sea god gripped his trident tighter. Zeus believes we should simply destroy all foreign entities. Seal the breaches, and be done with it. A chill ran through Percy. And what do you believe? I believe my son has never failed when fate placed a burden on his shoulders. Poseidon placed a hand on Percy's shoulder. The masked one who threatened your camp, he is known to us from the previous incursion. He seeks the Biju for the same purpose now as then, reshape reality according to his design. And Orochi, a complication. In the previous conflict, he was an ally against the masked one, but his methods were troubling. He views godly authority as tyranny to be overthrown. Poseidon's lips twisted in a wry smile. Not an entirely unreasonable position, given some of my family's behavior, but his alternative would be worse. Percy absorbed this information, trying to make sense of the competing threats and divided loyalties. So what happens now? Zeus wants to blast me off the map, and I've got 2 different interdimensional warlords fighting over who gets to rip Kurama out of me. Not exactly seeing a win here, Dad. Poseidon's smile widened slightly. Always direct, Percy. It's one of your better qualities. His expression sobered. The Olympian Council is divided. Some side with Zeus, a swift, destructive response to eliminate all foreign elements. Others believe the prophecy deserves a chance to unfold. And which side won? For now, compromise. You have 7 days, the same deadline given by your masked adversary. 7 days to demonstrate that this bond with the 9 Tails can be controlled, that it serves Olympus rather than threatens it. Typical. Kurama snorted. Gods demand fealty even when offering help. Percy didn't relay that comment, instead asking, and after 7 days? If you cannot prove mastery over the fox's power by then, or if there are further incursions that threaten the mortal world. Poseidon's grip on Percy's shoulder tightened briefly. Zeus will act, with the full might of Olympus. He'd destroy Camp Half-Blood. He would target the source of the dimensional disturbance. Poseidon met Percy's gaze directly. You, as I predicted, Kurama said grimly, were simultaneously the solution and the scapegoat. Percy took a deep breath, considering their options. We need to train, then. I need to learn how to use chakra properly, how to combine it with my demigod abilities. Poseidon nodded. A wise approach. The Oracle has already authorized a quest. You and 2 companions may leave camp to investigate these dimensional breaches. Perhaps answers lie at their source. Annabeth will come, Percy said immediately. And Grover. His nature magic might help with understanding chakra. Choose carefully, Percy. Where you must go, it will test more than your power. Poseidon looked up at the sky, which had darkened with unnatural speed. I must return to Olympus. Zeus grows impatient with my absence. Wait, Percy said, you still haven't told me where these dimensional breaches are happening, or how to find them. Poseidon's form was already beginning to shimmer, sea mist gathering around him. Follow the crimson tide when it rises with the new moon. The thinnest point between worlds lies where forgotten gods still dream beneath mountains that never knew mortal feet. That's not helpful, Percy protested, but his father was already dissolving into sea spray. Gods and their riddles, Kurama grumbled as Poseidon vanished completely. At least he didn't try to kill us. Small victories, Percy sighed, turning back toward camp. Come on, we've got training to do. The arena stood empty in the early morning light as Percy faced Annabeth across the sand. She'd insisted on being his first training partner, arguing that her analytical Min.D would help identify the strengths and weaknesses of his new abilities better than the more straightforward approach favored by Ares campers. Okay, let's establish a baseline, she said, dagger in hand. First, fight me without using any of Kurama's power. Just your normal demigod abilities. Percy nodded, uncapping Riptide. The familiar weight of the sword centered him as he took a defensive stance. This is pointless, Kurama complained. We should be practicing chakra control, not playing with blades. Trust her, Percy replied silently. Annabeth knows what she's doing. Annabeth attacked without warning, her dagger a blur as she feinted left, then struck from the right. Percy parried, using the longer reach of his sword to keep her at bay. They fell into a familiar rhythm: strike, counter, dodge, advance, the product of years training together. After 3 minutes of increasingly intense combat, Annabeth called a halt. Good, you're not showing any decrease in your regular combat abilities. The seal doesn't seem to be interfering with your natural movement or reflexes. I could have told you that, Percy said, wiping sweat from his brow. Empirical evidence matters, seaweed brain. She made a note on the clipboard she'd brought. Now, try accessing a small amount of Kurama's chakra. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to enhance your physical abilities. Percy closed his eyes, reaching for the warm energy he'd felt before. Kurama stirred within him. Focus on your core, the fox instructed, his tone shifting from irritated to professional. Imagine the energy as a pool of heat behind your navel. Draw it out slowly, like sipping through a straw rather than gulping. Percy followed the instructions, feeling chakra rise through his system. It was different from his connection to the sea, hotter, more volatile, but also more focused. Where his water powers felt like becoming part of a larger force, chakra felt like concentrating power within himself. Percy, your eyes, Annabeth said softly. He opened them, seeing her startled expression. What about them? They're different. She approached cautiously, studying his face. The iris is still green, but there's a red ring around your pupil. And your pupils are slightly elongated. A minor physical manifestation, Kurama explained. Your body adapting to channel my chakra more efficiently. Percy relayed this information, then asked, how does it feel now? The chakra, it's steady, he told her. Not overwhelming like before, more controlled. Annabeth nodded, making another note. Good. Now, same exercise as before. Spar with me, but with this low-level chakra enhancement. This time, their combat changed dramatically. Percy found himself moving faster than before, his reactions sharper. Riptide felt lighter in his hand, and he could anticipate Annabeth's movements with uncanny precision. She landed fewer strikes, and those she did manage barely touched him before he was already countering. After just 1 minute, she stepped back, breathing hard. That's impressive, she admitted. Your speed increased by at least 30%, and your strength too, judging by how you're handling Riptide. It feels amazing, Percy said, looking at his free hand, which emitted a faint red glow. Like I've been moving underwater my whole life and suddenly I'm in air. This is nothing, Kurama said. And Percy could hear the pride in his voice. A fraction of what we could achieve with proper training. Annabeth wiped sweat from her brow. Let's try something else. Can you channel the chakra into Riptide? Like you did with the sea serpent. Percy nodded, focusing on his sword. The celestial bronze began to glow with the same red aura that surrounded his body. The metal heated in his hand. Not enough to burn but warm like sunbaked metal. It's responding well, he said. Celestial bronze seems compatible with chakra. Try a basic attack on that training dummy, Annabeth suggested, pointing to a straw-filled figure at the edge of the arena. Percy approached the dummy, adjusting his grip on the chakra-enhanced Riptide. With a single fluid motion, he slashed across the dummy's midsection. The blade passed through with minimal resistance, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the dummy's top half slid off the bottom, the cut edges smoldering with red energy. "Whoa," Percy breathed. "Clean cut," Kurama noted approvingly. "The chakra extends the blade's cutting edge at a microscopic level. With practice, you could slice through steel as easily as paper." Annabeth circled the dummy, examining the cut with scientific interest. "The cellular disruption is fascinating. It's not just cutting. The chakra is actually breaking down the material's structure." "Is that how it affects monsters?" Percy asked, watching the red energy continue to eat away at the dummy's edges. "I'd hypothesize yes," Annabeth replied. "Which could be incredibly useful against enemies with regenerative abilities." They continued training through the morning, methodically testing different applications of chakra. Percy learned to channel it to different parts of his body, enhancing his legs for jumping, his arms for striking, his eyes for improved vision. By noon, he'd mastered the basics of what Kurama called chakra flow, the ability to maintain a steady current of energy through his system without fluctuations or burnout. It wasn't the advanced techniques that shinobi in Kurama's world used, but it was a solid foundation. "That's enough for now," Annabeth finally said, noting Percy's fatigue. "We need to conserve your energy for the quest." Percy nodded, allowing the chakra to recede. The red glow faded from his skin, and he felt the fox's precinct. He settled back into a watchful corner of his consciousness. "Your body is adapting well," Kurama observed. "Better than most Jinchuriki at this stage. Your demigod physiology may actually be more compatible with chakra than purely human bodies." "Is that good or bad?" Percy asked as they walked toward the dining pavilion. "Good for our survival, potentially concerning for other reasons." "Which are?" "If demigods make ideal Jinchuriki, others may attempt to replicate what happened to you. Create more vessels for the other Biju, should they cross over." Percy hadn't considered that possibility. The thought of other demigods being forced to contain beings like Kurama, potentially less cooperative ones, was troubling. "We won't let that happen," he said firmly. Bold words from someone who couldn't prevent it happening to himself, Kurama replied, though without his usual bite. They reached the dining pavilion to find it buzzing with activity. The quest had been announced, and campers were discussing it in hushed, excited tones. Percy's appearance caused a momentary hush before conversations resumed at an even higher volume. Chiron approached as Percy filled his plate. "I trust your training went well?" the centaur asked, his tail flicking nervously. "Better than expected," Percy replied. "I've got basic control, at least. Enough to not accidentally burn down the camp." "An impressively low bar," Kurama commented dryly. Chiron nodded, though concern still lined his ancient face. "The Oracle has issued formal quest parameters. After lunch, you should consult with her. Rachel's here." Percy hadn't seen the Oracle since the previous summer. She arrived an hour ago, quite insistent that she needed to be present. Chiron lowered his voice. "She's been affected by these dimensional disturbances. Apollo's oracular powers seem sensitive to them." That didn't sound good. "We'll go right after lunch," Percy promised. He joined Annabeth at the Athena table. Camp rules about seating arrangements had relaxed somewhat since the end of the Titan War, and found her deep in conversation with Malcolm over a map spread between their plates. "I've been cross-referencing your father's clue," she told Percy as he sat down. "Forgotten gods still dream beneath mountains that never knew mortal feet. It has to be somewhere remote, obviously, but also somewhere with historical significance." "Any leads?" Percy asked, digging into his blue pasta. "3 possibilities." She pointed to locations on the map. "Here in the Olympic Peninsula, mountains that formed relatively recently in geological terms, and home to indigenous gods that existed outside the Olympian pantheon. Washington state's a long way to go on a hunch," Percy noted. Option 2. Certain peaks in the Hawaiian chain that have never been successfully climbed due to mysterious circumstances. The native gods there were never fully incorporated into any mainstream pantheon. Better, but still a lot of ocean to cross. Which brings us to option 3, and my personal favorite. Annabeth indicated a spot in the Atlantic, east of Florida. The Bermuda Triangle. Percy raised an eyebrow. "Seriously? Think about it." Poseidon mentioned the crimson tide when it rises with the new moon. The Bermuda Triangle is known for unusual oceanic phenomena, including bioluminescent algal blooms that sometimes appear red. And the mountains that never knew mortal feet. Underwater mountains, Annabeth said triumphantly. The Atlantic Ridge has seamounts that have never been explored by humans, some rising thousands of feet from the ocean floor without breaking the surface. Percy had to admit it made sense. The Bermuda Triangle had always been a hotspot for mysterious disappearances, which demigods knew were often caused by mythological phenomena that mortals couldn't comprehend. The girl is impressive, Kurama acknowledged. In my world, she would have made an exceptional strategist. She is in this world too, Percy replied silently. Lunch concluded with final preparations for the quest. Grover joined them, his Rasta cap covering his horns as he nervously chewed on a tin can. So, we're going to the Bermuda Triangle to find interdimensional rifts that might be spewing chakra monsters into our world. The satyr summarized, and I thought the last quest was dangerous. You don't have to come, Percy offered. I know you've got your Lord of the Wild duties. Are you kidding? Of course I'm coming. Grover straightened, attempting to look brave despite his trembling hands. Besides, if these rifts are affecting nature, I need to understand how. The Dryads have been reporting strange energy disrupting their connection to the Earth. With their team assembled, they headed to the big house, where Rachel Elizabeth Dare waited in the attic room that had once housed the previous Oracle's mummified remains. The space had been transformed since Rachel took on the Oracle's spirit. With comfortable furniture and colorful artwork covering the walls, Rachel herself sat by the window, her curly red hair gleaming in the sunlight. She turned as they entered, and Percy immediately noticed something different about her. Her eyes, normally green, now held flecks of crimson, the same shade as Kurama's chakra. The Oracle has been touched by energies from my world, Kurama said. Surprise evident in his mental voice. How fascinating. Percy. Rachel greeted him with a wan smile. And Kurama too, I presume. I've been expecting you both. Percy exchanged a glance with Annabeth. You can sense him. The Oracle can, Rachel clarified. Ever since the barriers started thinning, Apollo's gift has been evolving. I'm seeing visions from both worlds now. It's like watching two movies projected onto the same screen. Dangerous, Kurama muttered. Her mind wasn't designed to process both forms of spiritual energy simultaneously. Percy relayed this concern. Rachel nodded, unsurprised. It's been challenging, she admitted. But also illuminating. I understand things now that were hidden before, connections between our worlds that have always existed, just beyond perception. She stood, moving to the center of the room. Her posture changed subtly, becoming more formal, more oracular. You seek guidance for your quest to the Nexus Point, she stated. I can provide it, but be warned, the prophecy comes from both sides of the veil now. Some parts may not make sense until you've seen through eyes not your own. With that cryptic warning, Rachel's eyes began to glow, not with the usual green mist of Apollo's oracle, but with swirling crimson energy that reminded Percy uncomfortably of the dimensional tear on Half-Blood Hill. When she spoke, her voice echoed with dual tones. Where seas churn crimson under moonless sky, the veil between worlds grows paper thin. Fox and sea must learn to synchronize. Before the snake's lieutenant draws you in, what once was human now transformed stands guard. The choice to save or sever breaks the heart. When 9 and 12 collide in desperate hour, only shared pain reveals the greater power. The crimson light faded, and Rachel swayed on her feet. Annabeth rushed forward to steady her, helping her back to her seat by the window. That was different, Rachel murmured, pressing a hand to her temple. Are you okay? Percy asked, concerned by her pallor. I'll be fine. The visions are just more intense when they cross dimensions. She looked up at him, her eyes still flickering between green and red. You need to be careful, Percy. The barriers aren't just thinning physically, they're breaking down on fundamental levels. Things that shouldn't be possible in our world are becoming possible. She's right, Kurama said gravely. I can feel it too, the natural laws of your world bending to accommodate chakra. It's subtle now, but accelerating. The prophecy mentioned the snake's lieutenant, Annabeth said. Notebook already in hand. That must refer to someone working with Orochi. And, what once was human now transformed. Sounds like those chakra-enhanced people Orochi mentioned, Percy added. Grover nervously chewed his lip. I don't like the choice to save or sever part. Sounds like we'll face some tough decisions. The most significant line is the last, Kurama observed. Shared pain reveals the greater power. That suggests we'll need to achieve a deeper synchronization than mere chakra channeling. When Percy relayed this, Rachel nodded. The visions have had. They show different levels of partnership between Biju and Jinchuriki. The strongest bonds come through mutual understanding, sharing not just power, but consciousness itself. She speaks of complete synchronization. Kurama said, his mental voice uncharacteristically hesitant. It's rare, even in my world. And dangerous for both host and Biju. Dangerous how? Percy asked aloud. The boundaries between us would blur. Your thoughts, my thoughts, they would flow together. You might lose yourself in my memories, or I in yours. Some hosts never fully recovered their sense of self afterward. That didn't sound appealing. Let's consider that a last resort, Percy suggested. Rachel stood again, steadier now. You should leave at first light tomorrow. The new moon is in 3 days. That's when the barriers will be thinnest at the nexus point. Which is definitely in the Bermuda Triangle, Annabeth confirmed. All the signs point there. Indeed. Rachel handed RCY a small object, a compass with strange markings around its edge. This will guide you more precisely once you're in the area. It doesn't point north, it points toward dimensional disturbances. Percy accepted the compass, feeling it warm slightly in his palm. How did you get this? Apollo provided it, Rachel said with a small smile. The gods may be divided on how to handle this situation, but some are hedging their bets. Apollo believes the prophecy should be given a chance to unfold naturally. Because he's the god of prophecy, Kurama snorted. If Zeus overrides fate, it diminishes Apollo's domain. Divine politics, Percy muttered. Always helpful. They spent the remainder of the day preparing for the quest. Annabeth gathered maps and research materials on the Bermuda Triangle. Grover consulted with nature spirits about changing energy patterns along the east coast. Percy focused on one final training session with Chiron, who provided insight into combining divine energy with other power sources. The key is intention, the centaur explained as they practiced in the arena. Divine power responds to will and belief as much as to bloodline. Your sea powers manifest because you believe in your connection to the ocean, because you understand its nature intuitively. And chakra doesn't work that way? Percy asked, attempting to channel both energies simultaneously, with limited success. From what you've described, chakra is more structured, more mechanistic. Chiron circled Percy, observing his technique. It flows through specific pathways, requires precise control. Divine power is wilder, more responsive to emotion. He's not entirely wrong, Kurama admitted. Though chakra responds to emotion too, just differently. Strong feelings can enhance chakra output, but they also make it harder to control. Percy tried again, drawing on his connection to the sea while simultaneously channeling Kurama's chakra. For a moment, the energies flowed separa. Tele within him, water power cool and fluid, chakra hot and dense. Then, with careful concentration, he brought them together. The result was immediate and startling. Steam erupted from his skin as the energies reacted, creating a swirling mist that glowed with sea green light shot through with crimson. Riptide, which Percy had been holding loosely at his side, transformed, its celestial bronze blah. Now wreathed in what looked like liquid fire. Remarkable, Chiron breathed. A true synthesis. Percy stared at his glowing weapon, feeling the dual power coursing through him. It was exhilarating but exhausting. Like trying to run and swim simultaneously. Enough, Kurama warned. Your chakra network isn't developed enough to sustain this for long. Reluctantly, Percy released both energy sources. The glow faded, and he nearly stumbled as fatigue hit him all at once. That was intense, he managed, leaning on Riptide for support. And potentially very useful, Chiron noted. But, Kurama is right. You must build your stamina gradually. Attempting too much too quickly could damage your body's ability to channel either energy. They concluded training as evening approached. Percy retreated to his cabin to rest before dinner, collapsing onto his bunk with a groan of exhaustion. You pushed too hard, Kurama chided, though without real anger. Though I'm impressed you managed the synchronization at all. Most Jinchuriki take months to achieve even partial energy combination. Maybe demigods have an advantage, Percy suggested, staring at the cabin ceiling. We're already wired to channel divine energy. Perhaps. Kurama was silent for a moment. There's something you should know before we depart tomorrow. Something about the masked man. Percy sat up, sensing the fox's serious tone. What about him? In my world, he was defeated, apparently killed, by a shinobi named Naruto Uzumaki, my last Jinchuriki before you. Kurama's voice grew quieter. If he's alive in this dimension, it means either he escaped to your world before his defeat, or what? Or someone new has taken up his mantle. The eye glimpsed through his mask. It possessed the Sharingan. A rare ocular power that can control Biju. Few possess it, but those who do are invariably dangerous. Percy absorbed this information. So either we're facing an enemy you thought was dead, or someone new with the same powers. Neither option sounds great. No, Kurama agreed grimly. Neither does. A knock at the cabin door interrupted their conversation. Percy opened it to find Annabeth, arms laden with scrolls and a laptop. I've been researching dimensional theory, she announced, bustling past him to spread her materials on his desk. There's surprisingly relevant material in Daelus's notes. He apparently experimented with pocket dimensions for some of his workshops. Percy smiled despite his exhaustion. Annabeth in research mode was a force of nature. According to his calculations, she continued, pointing to incomprehensible equations, dimensional barriers naturally fluctuate based on cosmic alignments. The new moon represents a low point in divine energy, gods hissed. Oracles have diminished power during this phase, which makes it easier for non-divine energies to seep through, Percy guessed. Exactly. Annabeth beamed at him. The Bermuda Triangle seems to be a natural weak point, a place where the fabric of reality is naturally thinner. Add the underwater mountains, which Daedalus theorized act as cosmic antennae of sorts, and you have perfect conditions for dimensional bleed-through. Her analysis aligns with what I know of dimensional boundaries, Kurama noted. In my world, certain locations were known as thin places, where spiritual energy could cross between realms more easily. So what's our plan when we get there? Percy asked. We find the rift and then, what? Patch it up somehow. Annabeth's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. That's the part I'm still working on. In theory, if we understand how the breach formed, we might be able to reinforce the boundary. But we'll need to see it firsthand to know for sure. And deal with Orochi's lieutenant, whoever that is. Percy added. And the transformed humans, Annabeth agreed soberly. The prophecy suggests we'll face some difficult ethical decisions there. Humans altered by chakra cannot simply be turned back. Kurama warned. Once chakra networks form within a body, removing them would be like removing part of the nervous system. Fatal, in most cases. Percy relayed this grim assessment. Annabeth's expression grew troubled. So we might have to choose between killing them or leaving them as chakra-enhanced servants of Orochi, she concluded. Hence, the choice to save or sever breaks the heart. The weight of their quest settled over them. This wasn't just about fighting monsters or challenging gods, they were dealing with innocent humans caught in a power struggle between dimensions. We should get some rest, Percy finally said. Early start tomorrow. Annabeth nodded, gathering her research materials. At the door, she paused. Percy, be careful with the chakra. I've been reading about Jinchuriki in the fragments of text Rachel provided. The relationship between host and Biju is complicated. Kurama and I are working it out, Percy assured her. I know. She hesitated. Don't lose yourself, okay? Remember who you are. After she left, Kurama stirred within Percy's mind. She fears I will influence you too greatly, the fox observed. Not an unreasonable concern, given the history of Jinchuriki. Will you, Percy asked bluntly, try to take over? I could attempt it, Kurama replied with equal frankness. When your emotions run high, when you draw deeply on my chakra, the boundaries between us thin. In such moments, a Biju can assert control. That's not what I asked. Kurama was silent for a long moment. No, Percy Jackson, I will not try to take control. Not because I couldn't, but because our interests align. Neither of us wishes to be used as a weapon by Orochi or the Masked One. Neither of us. Wants to see your world torn apart by dimensional instability. And after, if we succeed, another pause. One crisis at a time, Jinchuriki. One crisis at a time. Dawn found them at the camp's beach, where Poseidon had arranged transportation, a sleek yacht that Percy suspected had been borrowed from some mortal billionaire. The sea was unusually cooperative as they set out, waves practical. Lee pushing them toward their destination. Your dad's helping, Annabeth observed as they cleared Long Island Sound in record time. For now, Percy agreed. Though I doubt his assistance extends to the Bermuda Triangle itself. That's where the dimensional stuff is happening, and he's probably limited in how much he can directly interact with it. Gods are often constrained by their own domains, Kurama noted. The sea god may command oceans, but dimensional boundaries fall under different authority. Hecate, probably, Annabeth said when Percy shared this thought. Goddess of crossroads and boundaries. I wonder which side she's taking in the Olympian debate. The journey south took less time than it should have, thanks to Poseidon's subtle assistance. By nightfall, they had reached the northern edge of the Bermuda Triangle. Percy took the helm as darkness fell, guiding the yacht through unusually calm waters. This place feels wrong, Grover said, nervously sniffing the air. The nature spirits here are confused, disoriented, like they're hearing voices from somewhere else. Percy knew what he meant. The sea beneath them felt strange, still recognizable, still responding to his powers. But with an undertone of something foreign. It reminded him of listening to two radio stations simultaneously, signals overlapping and interfering with each other. The boundaries are very thin here, Kurama confirmed. I can sense my world's energy bleeding through. Not just chakra, but the fundamental spiritual composition. They anchored for the night in a sheltered cove, taking turns on watch. Percy's dreams were turbulent. Visions of massive-tailed beasts rampaging through Manhattan, the masked man standing atop Olympus with gods kneeling before him, Orochi transforming campers into chakra-wielding soldiers. He woke before dawn, drenched in sweat. Kurama was unusually quiet, and Percy sensed the fox had shared his dreams, or perhaps influenced them. Was that your doing? He asked silently. Not intentionally, Kurama replied. But our subconscious minds touch when we sleep. Your fears blend with my memories, creating visions neither of us fully controls. Great. As if regular demigod dreams weren't bad enough. The second day brought them deeper into the triangle. Rachel's compass grew warm in Percy's hand, the needle spinning erratically before settling on a southeastern heading. The sky above them took on a faint reddish tinge, visible only when looking directly up, as if the atmosphere itself was being stained by another world's influence. By midday, they encountered the first physical sign of dimensional bleeding. A perfect circle of water, perhaps 50 yards across, glowed with crimson bioluminescence, the crimson tide Poseidon had mentioned. It's beautiful, Annabeth murmured as they approached cautiously. And completely unnatural, Grover added, his hooves clattering nervously on the deck. Percy extended his senses into the glowing water, trying to understand what he was feeling. The sea life had vacated the area completely. No fish, no plants, nothing living within the crimson circle. It's a thin spot, Kurama explained. Not a full breach, but close. The energy signature is similar to what leaked from the scroll when you first found me. We should take samples, Annabeth suggested, already preparing collection vials. I wouldn't, Percy warned. This stuff feels invasive. Like it's looking for something to latch onto. Your instincts are correct. Concentrated chakra seeks a vessel. Any living organism would do. They gave the crimson circle a wide berth, continuing on the compass's heading. As the day progressed, they encountered more such circles, varying in size but identical in their perfect circular shape and eerie glow. The sea grew rougher as afternoon faded into evening, unnatural currents pushing against the yacht's hull. Percy found himself working harder to maintain control, as if the water itself was becoming less responsive to his powers. The natural laws are shifting, Kurama observed. This area is beginning to operate under a blend of both worlds' principles. Your divine abilities may become less reliable as we approach the nexus point. That was concerning. Percy had always relied on his connection to the sea, especially in dangerous situations. What about you? Does it affect your chakra too? Quite the opposite. My energy grows stronger here, more resonant with the surrounding environment. I could channel more power with less strain on your body. At least that was something. As the sun set on their second day, the compass needle began to spin rapidly, then pointed straight down, toward the ocean floor. "We're here," Percy announced. "Or rather, it's below us." Annabeth consulted their navigation equipment. According to these readings, we're directly above one of the largest seamounts in the region. It rises to within 500 feet of the surface. "That's our mountain that never knew mortal feet," Grover concluded. Percy studied the water around them. The crimson glow had spread, forming interconnected circles like a vast Venn diagram across the ocean's surface. At the center, directly above the seamount, the glow pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat. "I need to go down there," Percy said. "See what's happening firsthand." Annabeth frowned. "We should all go. The prophecy mentioned all three of us." "You can't breathe underwater," Percy pointed out. "But I can make something that will let us," she countered, pulling an old Greek scroll from her pack. Daedalus had designs for a bubble system that uses trapped air particles in a semi-permeable membrane. With your help controlling the water pressure, it should work for a few hours. Percy had learned long ago not to doubt Annabeth's inventions. With his water powers and her engineering knowledge, they created bubble helmets for both her and Grover, allowing them to breathe. He underwater while still speaking normally. As night fell completely, they prepared to descend. The crimson glow provided eerie illumination, reflecting off their equipment and casting long shadows across the yacht's deck. "Remember," Percy said as they gathered at the rail, "if anything goes wrong down there, I can get you back to the surface quickly. Just stay close." Annabeth nodded, checking her dagger and the waterproof bag containing their research materials. Grover nervously adjusted his reed pipes, which he'd waterproofed with a special beeswax coating. "Ready?" Percy asked, feeling Kurama's energy stir within him as they prepared to enter the altered waters. "As ready as one can be to enter the space between worlds," the fox replied dryly. They slipped into the sea together, Percy creating currents to guide them downward toward the seamount. The crimson glow surrounded them, thicker here than at the surface, swirling in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, like written language Percy couldn't quite read. "It is language, of a sort," Kurama said, responding to Percy's thoughts. "Energy signatures from my world, imprinting on yours. Messages without intended recipients." "What do they say?" Percy asked silently. "Fragments. Echoes. Barrier weakening. 9 shall return. Host required. Nothing cohesive." That wasn't comforting. As they descended deeper, the normal properties of the ocean began to change subtly. Pressure seemed to obey different laws, allowing Annabeth and Grover's air bubbles to maintain integrity even at depths that should have crushed them. Light behaved strangely, the crimson glow creating pockets of perfect visibility amid areas of impenetrable darkness. At 300 feet, they encountered the first patrol. The figures emerged from a swirling vortex of crimson energy, human in general shape, but transformed. Their skin had a scaled texture that reflected the red light, and their movements were unnaturally fluid, as if they had additional joints. Each wore a breathing apparatus that resembled a stylized snake's head, with tubes running along their bodies. "Chakra-enhanced humans," Kurama confirmed. "Orochi's work. He's altered their bodies to survive in this environment." There were 4 of them, moving in perfect synchronization as they circled the intruders. They carried no visible weapons, but Percy noticed their hands were webbed, with sharp claws extending from each finger. "We come in peace," Percy called out, though he kept Riptide ready. "We're just here to investigate the dimensional anomalies." The transformed humans didn't respond verbally. Instead, one made a series of hand gestures that Percy recognized from Kurama's explanations, a shinobi hand sign. "They're using jutsu," Kurama warned. "Water-style technique. Prepare yourself." The water around them suddenly coalesced into a series of pressurized jets that shot toward them from multiple angles. Percy deflected them instinctively, using his own water powers to disrupt the attack. "What the heck was that?" Grover yelped, nearly dropping his reed pipes. "Chakra manipulation of water," Percy explained quickly. "They're using shinobi techniques." Annabeth's eyes widened behind her bubble helmet. "They've fully adapted to chakra use. These aren't just transformed humans, they've been trained." The patrol attacked again, is time splitting up to approach from different directions. Their movements were blindingly fast underwater, far beyond normal human capability. We need to respond in kind, Kurama urged. Channel my chakra, not full power, but enough to match their speed. Percy nodded, drawing on the fox's energy. The familiar warmth spread through his limbs, and the water around him began to steam slightly despite the cold depths. His vision sharpened, revealing details of their attackers he hadn't noticed before, gill-like slits on their necks, pupils elongated into vertical slits like a snake's. Grover, can you communicate with them? Percy asked, deflecting another water attack. They were human once, maybe you can reach whatever's left of their original nature. The satyr nodded nervously, raising his reed pipes to his lips. The music that emerged was distorted by the water but still recognizable, a woodland melody that spoke of peace and natural harmony. For a moment, the transformed humans hesitated, their coordinated movements faltering. One of them, a woman, Percy realized, reached up to touch her breathing apparatus, as if confused by its presence. It's working, Annabeth whispered. There's still human consciousness in there. But the moment passed quickly. The leader of the patrol made another hand sign, and the others snapped back to attention. This time, they all performed the same sequence of signs simultaneously. This is more dangerous, Kurama warned. Combined technique. Water prison jutsu. Don't let it touch you. The water around them began to condense into perfect quartz spheres that moved with unnatural precision, attempting to encapsulate each of them. Percy slashed at one with Riptide, channeling Kurama's chakra through the blade. The sphere dissolved into steam upon contact. Annabeth, Grover, stay behind me, Percy ordered, creating a barrier of his own water control enhanced by chakra. The patrol pressed their attack, their techniques growing more coordinated and complex. Percy found himself fully engaged in countering their water manipulation while protecting his friends. It was like fighting other children of Poseidon, except their control came from chakra rather than divine heritage. We cannot win a protracted battle, Kurama advised. Not while protecting your companions. We need a decisive move. Any suggestions? Percy asked, deflecting another water prison attempt. Let me show you a basic shinobi technique, the substitution jutsu. It will allow us to disorient them long enough to slip past. Under Kurama's guidance, Percy formed the necessary hand signs, awkward at first, but growing more natural as the fox's muscle memory temporarily overlapped with his own. The chakra flowed in a new pattern, and suddenly Percy's perception shifted. Where he had been floating seconds before, a swirling mass of water now took his shape momentarily before dispersing. Meanwhile, Percy himself had teleported 20 feet to the side, behind the patrol. The transformed humans spun in confusion, searching for their target. Annabeth, Grover, to me, Percy called. His friends swam toward him quickly, the patrol still disoriented by his sudden displacement. How did you do that? Annabeth demanded as they regrouped. Shinobi technique, Percy explained quickly. Now let's move before they recover. They descended rapidly, leaving the confused patrol behind. Percy maintained a small flow of chakra, enhancing his swimming speed and allowing him to pull his friends along at a pace they couldn't have managed otherwise. More ahead, Kurama warned as they approached the seamount's peak. And something else, a focal point of dimensional energy. The nexus we're seeking. The seamount rose before them, its summit flattened unnaturally into a perfect circular plateau. Structures had been built there. Not the ruins Percy had expected, but modern installations that looked like a cross between scientific equipment and religious architecture. At the center of the plateau stood a massive crystal formation identical to the one Percy had found underwater, but hundreds of times larger. It pulsed with crimson light, sending waves of energy outward in rhythmic bursts. Around it, dozens of transformed humans worked at various stations, monitoring equipment or performing synchronized movements that Percy recognized as chakra channeling exercises. It's like a research facility, Annabeth whispered as they observed from behind an outcropping of rock. They're studying the dimensional breach. Or widening it, Percy suggested, noting how the crystal's pulsing intensified whenever the transformed humans directed their combined chakra toward it. Grover pointed to one side of the plateau, where a series of transparent members contained what appeared to be humans in various stages of transformation. Some looked almost normal, while others had developed the snake-like characteristics of the patrol they'd encountered. Experimentation, the satyr said, his voice thick with emotion. They're systematically transforming people, and not all survive the process, Kurama noted grimly, directing Percy's attention to a pile of bodies being removed from failed transformation chambers. Chakra adaptation has a high mortality rate when forced artificially. Percy felt sick. These weren't monsters born to threaten them. Gods. They were humans being weaponized against their will. We need to shut this down, he said firmly. Agreed, Annabeth replied, but how? There are dozens of them, and we don't know how to close a dimensional breach. Maybe we don't need to close it yet, Percy suggested. Maybe we just need to understand it better, gather intel to take back to Chiron and the gods. Reconnaissance is wise, Kurama agreed. This facility is too well established to neutralize with our current resources. They moved closer, staying hidden among the rocky outcroppings that surrounded the plateau. Percy extended his senses, trying to understand the flow of water and energy around the crystal formation. What he discovered chilled him. The crystal isn't just connecting to another dimension, he told the others. It's thinning reality, making this area follow different natural laws. That's why our equipment readings went haywire, Annabeth realized. Physical constants are shifting, and why nature feels wrong here. Grover added, the spirits are caught between worlds, following conflicting patterns. As they watched, a new figure emerged from what appeared to be a command center built into the seamount itself. Unlike the transformed humans, this individual moved with natural grace and authority. Though humanoid, there was nothing human about them. Scales covered their entire body, and a hood-like extension flared around a serpentine head. Orochi's lieutenant, Kurama identified immediately. A true hybrid, not merely transformed. The snake sage's chakra has completely rewritten their biology. The lieutenant surveyed the operation with glowing yellow eyes, occasionally issuing commands that sent the transformed humans scurrying to adjust equipment or redirect chakra flows. Their movements were fluid, almost hypnotic, as they circled the crystal formation. We need to get closer, Annabeth whispered. I need to see those control panels to understand what they're doing. Too risky, Percy countered. We'd be spotted immediately. Not if we create a distraction, she argued. Something to draw their attention away from the command center. Before they could formulate a plan, Grover suddenly stiffened. Something's coming, he warned, eyes wide. Something big, from inside the crystal. Percy turned his attention back to the massive crystal formation. The pulsing had accelerated, the crimson glow intensifying until it was painful to look at directly. The transformed humans had fallen into formation around it, performing synchronized hand signs that channeled their collective chakra toward the crystal's core. The lieutenant stood directly before the crystal, arms outstretched, chanting in a language that Percy felt more than heard, vibrations th. It resonated with Kurama's energy inside him. They're forcing the breach wider, Kurama realized with alarm. Creating a temporary portal large enough for physical transit between dimensions. They're bringing something through, Percy translated for his friends. The crystal's surface began to ripple like liquid, its solid structure temporarily dissolving into pure energy. From within its depths, a massive shape emerged, serpentine, with multiple heads that twisted and hissed as they pushed through the dimensional barrier. Hydra, Annabeth gasped. No, something worse. Yamata no Orochi, Kurama growled. The eight-headed serpent of Japanese mythology. Not the original, but a summoned version, a chakra construct given physical form. The creature that emerged fully from the crystal owl was nightmarish. A massive serpent with 8 heads, each larger than a school bus, its body covered in iridescent scales that shifted between midnight black and blood red. It moved with impossible grace despite its size, coiling around the crystal formation as the transformed humans prostrated themselves before it. The lieutenant approached the central head, pressing their forehead against its snout in what appeared to be a gesture of reverence or communication. They're coordinating, Annabeth realized. The lieutenant is receiving instructions. From Orochi himself, Percy asked Kurama. No, this is merely a summons, powerful, but not sentient in the way gods or Biju are. It serves as a conduit for Orochi's will, but isn't Orochi himself. After several minutes of communion, the lieutenant turned to address the assembled transformed humans. Their voice carried clearly through the water, enhanced by chakra to reach every corner of the facility. The barrier thins as prophesied, they announced. 3 days hence, when the moon is dark, our Lord Orochi will cross fully into this realm, bringing liberation to a world too long dominated by false gods. Your sacrifices have prepared the way, and your transformed bodies will serve as the vanguard of a new order. Cheers erupted from many of the transformed humans, though Percy noticed some remained silent, their expressions blank or conflicted. Those who still cling to their old consciousness will be purged, the lieutenant continued, as if sensing this hesitation. Only the fully committed shall witness the ascension. Purged, Kurama repeated darkly. That explains the bodies we saw. Failed transformations, yes, but also those who resisted mental conditioning. Percy's grip tightened on Riptide. We need to help them. Percy, we can't fight that thing, Annabeth hissed, gesturing toward the 8-headed serpent. Not to mention all the transformed humans and whatever the lieutenant is. We don't need to fight them all, Percy insisted. Just create enough chaos to free those who don't want to be here. Grover nodded, determination replacing his earlier fear. I felt it when I played my pipes, some of them responded. Their human nature isn't completely gone. A rescue rather than a frontal assault, Kurama mused. Tactically sound, if we can manage it. But the timing must be perfect. As they debated their approach, the seamount shuddered, the crystals pulsing suddenly accelerated, its glow flaring brightly enough to illuminate the ocean for miles around. The lieutenant looked up in surprise, clearly not expecting this development. Something's wrong, Annabeth whispered. This wasn't part of their plan. The crystal's surface rippled again, but instead of the controlled portal from before. Cracks appeared across its structure. Energy leaked from these fissures in wild, uncontrolled bursts, causing the transformed humans to back away in alarm. The dimensional boundary is destabilizing, Kurama warned. Their forced opening has weakened the structural integrity of the barrier itself. The lieutenant rushed to one of the control panels, frantically adjusting settings. As the 8-headed serpent thrashed in agitation, its massive coils threatening to crush equipment and personnel alike. Containment failing, someone shouted. Multiple breach points forming. Hey! RCY could see it happening. Smaller crystals forming spontaneously throughout the water around the main formation, each one a miniature portal leaking crimson energy into their world. This is our chance, he told the others. While they're distracted with the containment failure, we can approach the holding chambers and free whoever's still human enough to want escape. Annabeth nodded, though her expression remained concerned. Be careful, if those smaller breaches are unstable. I know. Percy turned to Grover. Can you play something that might reach the transformed humans? Something to break through their conditioning. Even temporarily. The satyr nodded, raising his pipes. I'll try a panic-inducing melody, something that triggers flight rather than fight responses. Might give us the chaos we need. As Grover began to play, Percy drew on Kurama's chakra, preparing for what would undoubtedly be a challenging extraction. The red energy flowed more easily here, responding to similar energy saturating the environment. Be careful, Kurama cautioned. The abundance of external chakra makes it easier to draw on my power, but also harder to control. Don't pull more than you can handle. Percy nodded, limiting the flow to a level he'd practiced with during training. His skin took on the now familiar red glow, his senses sharpening as the chakra enhanced his demigod abilities. Grover's melody rose above the chaos of the failing containment procedures, a haunting tune that spoke to primal instincts rather than conscious thought. Among the transformed humans, heads turned, expressions shifting from determination to confusion to fear. It's working, Annabeth whispered. Some of them are breaking conditioning. Indeed, about a third of the transformed humans had stopped their assigned tasks. Looking around with expressions of growing panic or bewilderment. A few were examining their own transformed bodies as if seeing them for the first time. The lieutenant noticed immediately. Maintain discipline, they shouted, their voice carrying a compulsive chakra edge. Resume your stations. Some obeyed automatically, but others began backing away, their movements uncoordinated and panicked. Several turned toward the holding chambers where newer subjects were kept, as if recognizing friends or family members among the captives. The lieutenant gestured sharply, and the most loyal of the transformed humans moved to block access to the chambers. Eliminate the compromised units, the lieutenant ordered coldly. Now, Percy urged, launching himself from their hiding place. They shot toward the facility, Percy leading with Riptide drawn and glowing with combined sea power and chakra. Annabeth flanked right, her dagger ready, while Grover continued laying his panic-inducing melody while swimming to the left. The lieutenant's head snapped toward them, yellow eyes narrowing. Intruders. The Jinchuriki is here. Several loyal transformed humans moved to intercept them, performing hand signs that sent jets of pressurized water shooting toward the approaching trio. Percy deflected them with a combination of his own water control and Kurama's chakra, creating a safe corridor for Annabeth and Grover to advance. Get to the chambers, he shouted. I'll handle these guys. Watch the lieutenant, Kurama warned. They're not just channeling Hakra, they're merging with the serpent summons. Percy saw it happening, the lieutenant's form shifting, growing as they seemed to absorb power directly from the eight-headed serpent. Their body elongated, scales gleaming with the same iridescent quality as the summoned creature, limbs transforming into more serpentine appendages. The compromised transformed humans took advantage of the confusion, several breaking for the holding chambers themselves. They began releasing the newer subjects, many of whom seemed barely transformed at all. Recent captures, Percy guessed, who hadn't yet undergone full modification. Annabeth reached the control panel for the chambers, quickly assessing the technology. It's a hybrid system, part digital, part chakra-based, she called. I can override the electronic components, but the chakra seals need to be broken manually. Grover directed his music toward the chambers specifically now, encouraging the escaping subjects while continuing to disrupt the loyalty conditioning of those still wavering. Percy found himself facing three fully transformed humans who remained loyal to the lieutenant. They moved with coordinated precision, utilizing water-style jutsu that would have impressed even experienced shinobi. Let me guide your movements, Kurama offered. Just for this fight, I know these techniques and their counters. Do it, Percy agreed. Feeling the fox's influence extend beyond mere chakra provision. His body began moving with new fluidity, performing hand signs that came from Kurama's knowledge rather than his own. Water coalesced around his free hand, forming a spiraling sphere of concentrated chakra and liquid. Rasengan, Kurama named the technique. A powerful close-range attack. Percy drove the spiraling sphere into the water before him, creating a vortex that caught two of his attackers and sent them tumbling away into the darkness. The third pressed forward, hands forming seals for another technique. Before they could complete it, Percy's body moved again under Kurama's guidance, Riptide slashing in a pattern that seemed to leave glowing trails in the water. The transformed human couldn't track the movement fast enough, and the chakra-enhanced blade cut through their protective scales, leaving a non-lethal but incapacitating wound across their torso. Enough, Kurama said, withdrawing his direct influence. The lieutenant is approaching. Percy turned to face the true threat. The lieutenant had completed their transformation, now resembling a smaller version of the summoned serpent, with two heads tending from a humanoid torso and a powerful tail instead of legs. So, the new Jinchuriki comes to interfere, the lieutenant hissed, voice resonating with doubled harmonics. Lord Orochi will be pleased when I deliver you to him. Not gonna happen, Percy replied, readying Riptide. And I'm taking these people with me when I leave. The lieutenant laughed, the sound chilling even underwater. These people no longer exist as they were. They are evolving, transcending their limited human forms. As all will, when Lord Orochi remakes this world. Looks to me like plenty of them disagree with your evolution plan. Percy countered, nodding toward the chambers where Annabeth and Grover had successfully freed most of the captives. The less transformed humans were helping others escape, forming a chaotic exodus away from the facility. The lieutenant's eyes narrowed. Temporary confusion. The weak-minded may resist initially, but all eventually embrace their superior forms. Or die trying, Percy challenged. I saw your disposal area. Necessary sacrifices for glorious advancement. The lieutenant's two heads weaved hypnotically as they circled Percy. You could understand, Jinchuriki. You've already begun your own transformation. The Nine Tails changes you even now, cell by cell. Don't listen, Kurama warned. They're trying to distract you. But Percy couldn't help, wondering if there was truth in the lieutenant's words. He had noticed subtle changes, enhanced senses that remained even when not actively channeling chakra, occasional flashes of Kurama's memories mingling with his own. The lieutenant struck without warning, both heads attacking from different angles with fangs extended. Percy deflected one with Riptide but had to twist awkwardly to avoid the second. The serpentine teeth grazing his shoulder through his shirt. Pain lanced through the contact point, unnaturally intense. Poison, Percy gasped, feeling it spread rapidly. Channel my chakra to your shoulder. Kurama instructed urgently. My energy can neutralize most toxins. Percy directed the fox's chakra to the wound, feeling the burning sensation as Kurama's energy fought the venom. The lieutenant pressed their advantage, tail whipping around to strike at Percy's legs while the heads continued their assault. Fighting underwater had always been Percy's strength, but the lieutenant moved with equal facility in this environment, their transformed body perfectly adapted to aquatic combat. Each exchange of blows grew more intense as Percy found himself forced onto the defensive. We need more power, Kurama urged. A controlled release, not full transformation, but more than we've used before. How much more? Percy asked, narrowly avoiding another venomous strike. 2 taels worth. It will change your appearance somewhat, but maintain your consciousness. Percy hesitated only briefly. Do it. The chakra surged, far more powerful than anything Percy had channeled previously. Red energy erupted from his body in waves, forming a translucent shroud that took on a fox-like shape around him. Behind him, 2 tails of pure energy formed, swaying with a life of their own. The water around him began to boil despite the cold depths, creating a swirling barrier of superheated liquid that the lieutenant couldn't penetrate. Percy felt his canine teeth lengthen slightly, his fingernails hardening into claws. His vision shifted, colors inverting briefly before settling into a heightened state where every movement seemed to happen in slow motion. What is this power? The lieutenant hissed, backing away from the chakra shroud's intense heat. This is what a true partnership between Jinchuriki and Biju looks like, Kurama said, his voice emerging from Percy's mouth alongside the demigod's own. Not subjugation, but synchronization. Percy extended a hand, forming another Rasengan, but this one larger, more stable, infused with both chakra and his innate water powers. The sphere pulsed with sea green and crimson energy, spinning so rapidly it created a miniature whirlpool around his palm. The lieutenant's eyes widened in recognition of the threat. They performed a complex series of hand signs, summoning a shield of condensed water enhanced with their own snake chakra. Percy launched forward, the chakra shroud streamlining his movement through water that no longer impeded him at all. The Rasengan struck the lieutenant's shield with catastrophic force, the competing energies creating a shockwave that rippled outward through the entire facility. Equipment shattered. Control panels exploded. The massive crystal formation at the center cracked further, bleeding dimensional energy in uncontrolled pulses. The lieutenant was thrown backward, the IR serpentine form slamming into the seamount with enough force to embed them in the rock. Percy pressed his advantage, the 2 chakra tails extending to wrap around the lieutenant's thrashing heads, immobilizing them. It's over, Percy said, riptide at the lieutenant's throat. Call off your forces. Let these people go. The lieutenant laughed despite their predicament. You've already lost, Jinchuriki. Look around you. Percy glanced back at the facility. The dimensional breaches were expanding, merging into larger tiers in reality. Through these openings, Percy could see glimpses of another world, forests, mountains. Villages that didn't exist in his dimension. The barrier is collapsing, Kurama said, alarm evident in his voice. Our fight has destabilized it further. Percy, Nabeth's voice cut through his thoughts. She was swimming toward him, guiding a group of the least transformed humans. We need to leave now. Grover says the whole seamount is becoming unstable. E8-headed serpent summons was thrashing wildly, its massive coils destroying what remained of the facility as dimensional energy surged through its form. The loyal transformed humans were either fleeing or caught in the chaos. Unable to maintain any semblance of order, Percy turned back to the lieutenant, who continued to smile despite their defeat. This was always the plan, they hissed. Quote, control or catastrophe, either outcome serves Lord Orochi's purpose. The barriers fall regardless. They're right, Kurama realized. This facility wasn't just studying the breach, it was designed to Trigger a cascading failure if compromised. Percy released the lieutenant, knowing they weren't the true threat now. Annabeth, get everyone to the surface. I need to try to stabilize the breach. How? She demanded, but directed the escaped humans upward nonetheless. We need to channel pure chakra into the main crystal, Kurama explained. Not to close the breach, but to temporarily reinforce its structure, like putting a bandage on a crack in a dam. Will that work? Percy asked as he swam toward the fractured crystal formation. It might buy time for your gods to implement a more permanent solution. My chakra resonates with the dimensional energy, it should create temporary coherence. Percy positioned himself before the massive crystal, which now resembled a shattered mirror, ACH fragment showing a different glimpse of the other world. The eight-headed serpent had disappeared, either destroyed by the chaotic energy or returned to its home dimension. Drawing on Kurama's guidance, Percy formed a complex sequence of hand signs, channeling chakra in patterns designed to stabilize rather than destroy. The red shroud around him intensified, the two tails extending to touch the crystal's fractured surface. Focus on harmony rather than power, Percy muttered, remembering Chiron's lessons about intention shaping divine energy. Stabilize, don't dominate. The chakra flowed from him into the crystal, spreading across its surface like a web of glowing red filaments. Where these filaments crossed fractures, the breaks seemed to pause their expansion, energy continuing to leak but no longer widening catastrophically. It's working, Kurama confirmed. Not healing, but containing. The degradation has slowed. Percy maintained the chakra flow, feeling his strength being as the technique demanded more and more energy. Sweat would have poured down his face if they weren't underwater. His muscles trembled with the effort of channeling such precise power for so long. Enough, Kurama finally said. Any more and you risk chakra exhaustion. This will hold for perhaps 3 days, coinciding with the new moon. Percy released the technique, the chakra shroud wrecked. Until only a faint red glow remained around his body. The crystal had stabilized, its fractures still visible but no longer actively spreading. We need to get back to the surface, Percy said, suddenly aware of how drained he felt. Report to Chiron and the gods. Yes, Kurama agreed. The true crisis approaches with the new moon. When the barrier is thinnest, Orochi and the masked man will make their move. Percy finished grimly. He swam upward, leaving the damaged facility behind. Most of the transformed humans had fled, either escaping into the open ocean or retreating deeper into the seamount. The lieutenant was nowhere to be seen. As Percy ascended, he spotted Annabeth and Grover guiding the rescued humans toward the surface. There were perhaps 20 in total, in various stages of transformation, some with only minor scale patterns on their skin, others with more substantial changes but still recognizably human. Percy, Annabeth called as he rejoined them. What happened down there? Temporary fix, he explained, too exhausted for details. Crystal stable for now, but not for long. 3 days at most. Grover looked worriedly at the humans they'd rescued. What about them? Some can barely swim with